And if you're just joining us, we'll be getting started in just a couple of minutes. All right, everybody, good afternoon and welcome to our first edition of Fuel Up with Hayden Thrasher, registered dietitian, and I will turn it over to Hayden.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. Hello, everyone, and happy Thursday. Just want to say thank you to you guys for attending. We are super excited to kick off our Fuel Up Athletic Fueling Series. This is aimed at really equipping you, the student athlete, with the information and the tools to successfully fuel your unique energy needs. So today kicks off our first module in a 6-part series. And today's title is Fueling as a Collegiate Athlete. So you can think about this as we're going to review the basics or the foundations. And a few housekeeping things before we get started. We will be recording this presentation and then sending it out to athletic directors and then posting on our dining websites. So if you have, if you're a coach or a trainer and you have student athletes that were unable to join, or athletes, if you have other friends that were unable to join, or if you just want to go back and review some of the information that we're talking about, we will have that provided for you. In addition, in the chat box, we have a link to a Microsoft form for you to fill out. So if you have additional questions, you have some follow-up questions to the content we talked about, or you're like, hey, I really want to talk about this topic in the future, please feel free to fill that out and provide any feedback to us. And with that, we will get started. So next slide. Awesome. So my name is Hayden Thrasher. I am the regional dietitian for Sodexo's West region. I grew up in Washington State and just love to spend so much time outdoors. I love trail running, hiking, camping. We also do a lot of fishing, so anything outdoors. As a dietitian, I practice through the lens or framework of intuitive eating. And then specific to athletes, I really enjoy working with athletes who struggle with disordered eating and helping to kind of guide them in developing a more positive relationship with food and their body. So we are going to now head into the agenda for today. So here's an overview of what we will be covering today. Again, the objective being to really introduce the foundations to a well-fueled athlete. So we'll discuss meeting energy needs, meeting nutrient needs. How do we identify what our bodies need? How does the food that we eat impact our performance? And then we'll also talk about the impact of nutrient timing. So the timing of when we consume foods, certain types of foods, how does that then impact our performance and our recovery? And then we will end with the important topic of hydration. All right, so meeting energy needs as an athlete requires awareness and a focused fueling plan. Start by thinking about all the energy that's required for our bodies to just carry out the normal functions as a human. So the energy our body needs to keep our heart beating, our brain functioning, our organs functioning. And then as an athlete, consider all of the additional energy that's required during sports. So the more active an individual is, the more energy they need to fuel those activities. Athletes are also going to need more energy than their non-athlete friends. Eating enough makes sure that our bodies can sustain its energy, that we can build and maintain muscle mass, and most importantly, that we can recover from all of the training that we're doing. Now, inadequate energy intake can compromise a lot of this, a lot of the performance, the building and maintaining muscle, and then the recovery, and can really easily sideline an athlete. So let's get into the risks of underfueling. So what actually happens when an athlete doesn't meet their energy needs? And underfueling can be either intentional or unintentional. So sometimes an athlete may be trying a new diet or pursuing weight loss. These are ways in which we are possibly intentionally underfueling. But then we also find a lot of times it's unintentional. So maybe we just have a lack of nutrition knowledge, knowing how much our bodies need. Maybe we have a really busy schedule and we haven't figured out how to balance being an athlete, being a student, and how nutrition kind of plays into these things. Also things like GI disorders or a lot of stomach discomfort. That could decrease our intake because we're always experiencing discomfort when we eat. Mental health also has a big impact and can affect our hunger levels, us being able to notice when we're hungry. And so not giving the body the fuel that it needs to perform, the outcome is kind of on a wide range or spectrum. And this is, largely due to the severity of the underfueling, specific to the sport, and then also the genetics of the individual. If caught early, underfueling can be easily addressed with a fueling plan. But if it continues for too long, there will be more serious consequences, which is where we are going to talk about REDS. So REDS, or RED-S, I've heard it both ways, but REDS stands for Relative Energy Deficiency in Sport. And it's characterized by low energy availability, which means that the individual is not consuming enough calories to support the amount of calories being expended by the athlete. So this was formerly known as the female athlete triad, and really just kind of focused on the low energy availability, menstrual dysfunction, and the loss of bone health. And REDS was adopted to really highlight all the wide array of the physiological consequences that go beyond the menstrual dysfunction and loss of bone health. This expansion is also so important because it takes into account that males too suffer from REDs. Along with the physiological consequences that you can see on the left diagram, you can also see how REDs can impact performance in a variety of ways. So we'll see that on the red side, or on the right side diagram. All right. So how do we meet our body's energy needs so that we don't find ourselves in that low energy availability state? We're not experiencing all of those decrease in our performance or physiological state. And instead of counting calories or focusing on counting macronutrients, I encourage athletes to really utilize these training plates to make sure that they're meeting their energy needs. So as we'll see across all three of the training plates, every meal should have a source of carbohydrates, protein, fat, and then what we call color. So color really focuses on produce, so fruits and vegetables. So that's what we mean when we talk about color. So each nutrient is extremely important in our fueling plan. So similar to athletes on the field, each one has a different role. You will also see that carbohydrates are manipulated the most depending on the training level. So the higher intensity or longer duration training, the more carbohydrates are needed, and we will talk about why shortly. If you do, as you're using this training plate method, if you notice that you're using these and you're still feeling hungry or unsatisfied, try increasing the portion sizes in each category, or you can also move up to the next level of training plate. So we're going to start it off with carbohydrates, and carbohydrates should be an athlete's best friend because carbohydrates equal energy. So we're going to go kind of with an example throughout this presentation, and we're going to consider that we have a house. And the main priority is to keep the house warm. So you have a wood burning stove, and carbohydrates are actually the wood that you're going to collect to keep the fire going. So carbohydrates can be broken down into glucose, which is the preferred fuel source for muscles. So helps to prevent fatigue, bonking, allows you to maintain speed and power, and is needed for both aerobic and anaerobic activities. Glucose is also the preferred source for the brain. So a lot of times we think about glucose and carbohydrates for our muscles solely, but the fuel it provides to our brain is so important. So think about your sport and think about how much or how important it is for your concentration, for your reaction time, for your memory. These are all abilities and functions that are so important to our sport that rely on glucose. So we are going to talk about the training or performance plates. And so we're going to go through examples of each nutrient group of I've just picked the hard training plate. So in the hard training plate, you're going to make half of your plate come from carbohydrates. Some of the top sources, so thinking about grains, your breads, your pastas, your bagels, your rice, starchy vegetables like potatoes, corn, peas, snacks like pretzels, chips, popcorn, dairy products. Fruits and vegetables are also a source of carbohydrates, but we do save those for a different category. So we save that for the color category, which we'll talk about. Discussing the types of carbohydrates or the categories that we can break carbohydrates down into is important because they each fill an important role in your fueling plan. So carbohydrates can be broken down into two categories. You've got complex and you've got simple carbohydrates. Complex carbohydrates refer to foods or carbohydrates that contain fiber, which is a type of carbohydrate that goes undigested through the body until it hits the large intestine. And this really helps to maintain a stable blood sugar. Complex carbohydrates are what we really want to prioritize at meal times. Simple carbohydrates on the other end is what we want to prioritize at or in and around our training and our workouts. So these are items that the simple carbohydrates, something that's going to break down really quickly and go straight to our muscle. So pre-workout, during our workout, and post-workout is really where we're going to want to highlight those simple carbohydrates. All right, so when most people think about protein, we're thinking about muscle. And not only do they function to build and repair muscle, but it also supports other tissue growth in the body. So your bones and joints, your enzymes, your hormones, your neurotransmitters. These are all such key components to athletic success. Thinking back to that house analogy, protein is a structure. So protein is what we use to build the walls and the roof and the floor, the doors. And an important piece on this is that protein can be used for energy if there isn't enough glucose available or coming in, which is unfortunate because it doesn't allow protein to actually do its job. So think about running out of wood to keep the fire going. The fire needs to continue, and so you have to start breaking down the walls or the doors to supply wood, which then weakens the structure of the house. All right, so protein. So thinking back to your hard training plate, making a fourth of your plate come from protein. Foods rich in protein come from animal products, so your chicken, turkey, beef, fish. You can also find a lot of protein in your animal byproducts, so eggs, milk, cheese, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese. Lots of plant sources of protein, your beans, lentils, soy products, and then also powders. So finding a lot of supplements or powders that contain protein. So your whey protein, your pea protein, collagen, and we'll actually have another module that goes more into supplement safety and kind of how supplements should be used. So that's definitely another topic that we'll get more into. For optimal performance, something we really want to focus on with protein is consistency. So spacing the protein out throughout the day. And a goal or just kind of an easy framework that you can remember is to try to shoot for about 15 to 30 grams of protein at each meal, post-workout, and then as like a bedtime snack. This makes sure that our bodies get steady pulses of amino acids throughout the day. So this chart shows some portion sizes of different foods to reach that 20 grams of protein. You may notice that plant-based sources require larger portions to reach that 20 grams of protein. All right, so how do fats fuel our performance? Like, how do fats kind of fit into this fueling plan that we're talking about? So fats act as another source of energy to fuel our fire. However, fats are slow and dense energy, so they take longer to break down and have more calories per bite. Typically, it's something that's better for low intensity endurance exercise. So you may see that recommendation for moderate amounts of fat or protein for really long endurance activities. Fats are also crucial for absorbing our fat-soluble vitamins, and certain types of fats like omega-3s actually help to decrease inflammation in the body and support brain function and structure. So coming back to our hard training fueling plate, once again, thinking about making 1 to 2 tablespoons of your meal come from fat. So a lot of times fat isn't necessarily something that's like an additional thing we're adding to the plate. We're finding it in a lot of the sources of protein, sometimes carbohydrates. So some sources of fat, oils, nuts, seeds, olives, avocados, whole milk dairy, beef, oily fish, bacon, sausage, pastries. And then next we'll kind of get into the 3 categories and how fat is actually broken down. So fats can be broken down into 3 different categories. We've got trans fat, saturated fat, and then unsaturated fat. And moving from left to right, we go from fats that we want to eat more sparingly to fats that we want to prioritize. And this is based on the nutrient value or the health impact. So while sources of saturated fat, we want to intake a little bit more moderately, they are foods that are rich in protein and vitamins like B vitamins, our calcium, iron, zinc. So there's a lot of great benefit to these. And then unsaturated fats are the most healthful, are linked to improving our heart health, along with decreasing inflammation and supporting brain health. And then our last category, so fruits and vegetables. So adding color to your plate will provide you with a rich source of vitamins and minerals in a wide variety. And consuming fruits and vegetables or micronutrients actually allow the macronutrients to do their job. So micronutrients are like a match that lights that fire, or it's the hammer and nail that we need to actually build the wall or the roof. They're rich in antioxidants and phytonutrients, which help to fight inflammation. Inflammation is a response to stress on the body. And while exercise is amazing for our bodies, intense exercise is a stress on our bodies. And so it's crucial for athletes to be prioritizing those micronutrients to help reduce the inflammation. And we'll talk a little bit through some specific micronutrients in a little bit. All right, so again, back to our performance plate. So making 1/4 of your plate come from fruits and vegetables. And I really encourage finding all of the different fruits and vegetables that you like, experimenting with different ways that they're cooked, they're seasoned. They don't have to be boring. I recommend that, or I'm always going to encourage that the athletes find ones that they like, that we don't have to, there's such a wide variety that we don't have to spend our days eating vegetables that are super bland or that we don't enjoy. So eating as many different colors as you can is always a great thing to do. And then moving into some specific micronutrients of concern. So there's specific ones that are extra important for athletes due to the energy systems that are being utilized during higher levels of activity. So we won't get into examples of each one, but calcium, super important for muscle contraction. Zinc, really important for energy production and immune status. So making sure that we're not getting sick as often and can continue training and performing. B vitamins, very important in muscle protein synthesis or the building of muscle. And then vitamin D, important for our body to actually absorb calcium, which is important for our bone health. Typically, or I guess food alone is not enough. Vitamin D, the sunlight, or getting vitamin D from the sun when the UV rays are strong enough is the best source. However, during winter months, if we're living at a higher latitude, then we're not typically getting enough. So a lot of times in winter, supplementing with vitamin D is a great idea. All right, now we're going to get into my favorite part, so nutrient timing. We are going to talk about how the foods that we consume and when we consume them around our workout, how that makes a big difference in our performance. So the 3 phases of nutrient timing are pre-workout, we're topping off our fuel stores for long-lasting energy. During our workout, the goal is to maintain our energy levels. And then after our workout, the goal is to refuel the muscle glycogen, meaning the glycogen is the stored glucose. So we want to kind of rebuild that back up. And then we also want to start rebuilding the muscle that we've broken down. So starting with pre-workout, pre-workout nutrition can be broken down into 3 phases. So 3 to 4 hours away, eating a performance plate with all of the macronutrients. There's still plenty of time to digest foods. We're going to want to prioritize those complex carbohydrates. 1 to 2 hours before exercise, having a mini meal or snack. And this is where you'll need to start simplifying foods. We're going to make that transition from the complex carbohydrates to the simple carbohydrates. And we can still, we want to limit our fat and our fiber and choose a high carb option. So something like a piece of toast with peanut butter and a banana would be a great option. Less than an hour before, we want to top off those fuel stores with very easy to digest carbohydrates. So think back to those simple carbs. And this will be used for rapid energy. So applesauce, pretzels, energy gels, gummies, things like that. And then 15 to 45 minutes after our training, we're going to aim for a snack with a 3-to-1 carb to protein ratio. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. So mid-workout fuel. Workouts lasting under an hour don't typically require any fuel, can just stick with water. If you are trying to build up gut tolerance or getting your stomach used to fueling while you're exercising for longer sessions, you may want to start practicing with little amounts of fuel during these workouts. Workouts lasting over or about an hour, more than an hour, prioritizing about 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrates per hour. So that may come in the form of like a carb-based sports drink, easy to digest carbs, sports foods. You'll see some dried mango, some applesauce there. And then workouts lasting 3 or more hours require up to 90 grams of carbohydrates per hour. So that can be about 60 to 90 grams. Sorry, you can hear my dog in the background. And then for ultra endurance events, we also will start incorporating moderate amounts of fat and protein. And then we'll end with post-workout fuel. So we want to start the recovery process as soon as possible. And there's 3 things that we want to think about. So refuel, repair, and rehydrate. So refuel, we want to consume carbohydrate-rich snack to, again, replenish those glycogen stores. We want to repair with adding a protein source to rebuild muscle. And then we need to rehydrate or replace our sweat loss with fluid and electrolytes. So a great way to do this, again, we're looking for a 3-to-1 carb to protein ratio. So if we're trying to get those 20 grams of proteins, then we're going to need 60 grams of carbohydrates. So something like chocolate milk with a banana will easily fit the bill. All right, and then within, just forgot to say that within 60 minutes, we want to make sure that we have like a full training plate. So within about 15 to 30 minutes, we want to have a snack, and then within the hour, having that full meal. All right, now we're going to wrap things up with hydration. So we're going to talk about kind of overall fluid needs and then also how we balance electrolytes and just the role that electrolytes play in our overall hydration and then performance. So dehydration is defined by or is explained by a harmful reduction in the amount of water in the body. So greater than a 2% body weight loss. And athletes are at an increased risk for dehydration due to the increased amount of sweat loss and respiration that we're doing in elevated activity. Proper hydration is just as important as proper fueling, and not having a plan can really lead to some serious performance consequences. So we're going to look at the effects of dehydration, both physiologically as well as performance. So increased or impaired core temp. So meaning that our body is not able to regulate it at its desired set point. Increased cardiovascular strain. So our heart has to work a lot harder. We have to maintain a higher heartbeat. And then altered central nervous system function. So our brain is not functioning as it should be. And then the final one is decreased gastric emptying. So that's where we're experiencing some of that GI upset. And then our fuel is not able to get to muscles quickly enough. From a performance perspective, dehydration leads to decreased speed, reaction time, endurance, decreased cognitive function. So like we talked about, our memory, our ability to concentrate and focus. And for every 1% of body weight lost through sweat, our heart rate increases 3 to 5 beats per minute, and speed decreases 2%. So we really see the high impact that dehydration has on our performance. Along with water, sweat is comprised of minerals that help to maintain our fluid status and plays a big role in our muscular function and energy metabolism. So sodium and chloride help to regulate and maintain our fluid status. And then magnesium and calcium play a key role in our muscular function and energy metabolism. So again, all of these plus water make up the contents of sweat. And sodium is actually the mineral that we lose most in our sweat. There's a big misconception that potassium is the biggest helper with muscle cramping, but actually sodium is the main electrolyte responsible for muscle cramping. So just something to remember if you're experiencing that. So what are some specific electrolyte-rich foods that we can focus on in these everyday training plates, as well as pre-workout, while we're working out, and then post-workout, to assure our bodies have the tools that it needs to be properly hydrated? So you can see here sources of sodium, potassium, calcium, and magnesium. One thing that I always like to share is that one dill pickle spear actually has the same amount of sodium that an entire sports drink has. So prioritizing pickles or pickle juice is always a great idea. All right, and then I will send you guys off with a final thing that you guys can easily calculate. So calculating your specific fuel needs are kind of a baseline. So a great starting place to calculate your daily fluid needs is to divide your body weight in pounds in half. And this is the amount of ounces of fluid needed daily. So of course, additional fluid is needed to replace the sweat loss. For every pound that you lose during exercise, you want to consume 20 to 24 ounces of fluid within 2 hours. And so while water is always we always want to choose that as our go-to fluid source. Other hydrating beverages include tea, coffee. Our first 2 to 3 cups is considered hydrating. After that, not so much. Smoothies, juice, sports drinks, and then fruits and vegetables are also packed with a lot of water. And then, so just a quick recap of our athlete foundations: meeting your overall energy needs, focusing on consistent protein intake, adequately getting carbohydrates, both complex and simple, fueling recovery with fruits and vegetables so that all those macronutrients can do their job, and then managing our fluid and electrolytes all help to make sure that we are well-fueled athletes ready for performance. And so just want to say thank you again for joining. If you missed at the beginning, we are recording this module and we'll be sending it out and posting it on our dining website so you guys can review, send it to friends. And then check out the link that is in the chat, and you can fill out, let me know if there's any topics you want to know in some of our future modules, if I can answer any specific questions about this training for you, and just provide some overall feedback to us. And stay tuned for module number 2 coming soon. So thank you guys again for joining.